Good afternoon and welcome to Tortoise Tech. If you're new here, my name is Reese, 4-piece from KFC or Wookie XXL. And in this review, I've heard you loud and clear. You guys have been dying to see an Evetech Trio review. So I thought, why not put an entire premium 5000 series Ryzen PC inside of the thing and show you what is pretty much the most powerful gaming PC you can buy today right off the Evetech store. So, the build, what is it comprised of? Let's go through that first before I reveal the beautiful machine behind all of these boxes, and I will peel away from it slowly, piece by piece, until you can see all of the RGB goodness. Starting off with the actual build itself. So 5950X and 3090 are going to be our chief two gaming components, RTX 3090 and the Ryzen 9 5950X. Ryzen 9 5950X 16-core 32 thread is savage, to say the least. I've been using the 3950X for the better part of 6 months on my production PC, and it's very handy to have, especially when it comes to rendering and those sort of things. And in gaming, it's got the best single core performance for that generation, and it's no different with the 5950X. It is the ultra premium single core processing power plant from AMD, as well as pretty much the best multi-threaded workstation class desktop class chip. So because of the die size, it's still considered a desktop class chip, but it really is more of an enterprise workstation level performer with a 16-core 32 thread setup. Multi-threaded performance is astronomical, and you would have seen that in my 5950X and 5900X review. The Cinebench scores are just kind of scary. I'll flash those on the screen for you here as well, so you can see what I'm talking about. And it's actually pretty easy to keep cool as well. A 240mm radiator is more than enough to make sure you're staying at the top ends of that CPU's boost. But what do you use to tie together two of the best components that you can buy? Well, pretty much the best processor and the best GPU you can buy for gaming right now. Well, you of course go for a ROG X570-F. This here motherboard is pretty much, I would say, the F series, Strix F series boards are pretty much the best boards you can buy in each category. I've built with 5 B550Fs now, and every single one of them has been absolutely fantastic. I've been running Prime X570 Pros, which are more or less in line with those, just without some of the Strix look and feel and feature sets, and you can get them then in like a black and white kind of feel, which is what I was going for. I wanted to do a Stormtrooper-esque build, which is why I then selected that motherboard. But those levels, as far as componentry and quality and all of that sort of stuff, as far as that goes, they're pretty much the best, because they put 14 power phases on these motherboards, which is 4 more than you need to run a 5950X at full chat. So if you are looking to do some overclocking, then there's plenty of headroom, about nearly 40% if you're doing the quick maths. So X570F, X570 chipset as well is quite nice. You do get some performance increase on that with the 5950X and the 5900X. You will see about a 3 to 4% increase over the older X470 chipset. So it's a nice to have, and PCI Express Gen 4 does mean you're future-proofed for new graphics cards and stuff coming out. I throw around future-proof as a term very loosely, but I think it's a good one to put on that, because we haven't even really gotten to PCI Express 4 gen products, only really SSDs that are coming through with that at the moment. So it is nicely configured for that and for those future GPUs. This board in particular as well has a really nice function for BIOS resetting and for automatic BIOS updating. You don't even need to have a CPU on there. You can just put it in, and it'll do the BIOS update from boot without even having a processor connected. You know, just ASUS things. Then this board as well does have optical audio. It's got USB Type-C. It checks every single box you could want to have. Then our other very nice ASUS component is the ASUS TUF 3090, which is just built supremely well. It's got 6 stacks of MLCCs. Now, what are MLCCs? It's the little pop capacitors that supply the very particular fine voltages to the GPU cores. And it's very important that those are of high quality and done to the NVIDIA spec, because we actually saw a slew of graphics cards running into that issue. So to combat that, ASUS goes and puts 6 sets of them. The base sort of setup from NVIDIA, or their base blueprint for that, is only 2 sets with 4 of the cheaper ones. So ASUS overkills it in only an ASUS way and puts 6 sets on their ASUS TUF. They've also done a little something interesting with the cooling. There's actually a pass through towards the back of the card, so a lot of that hot air can go straight up. So for instance, in this system with a top mount radiator, that hot air is going straight in there and being expelled out the top of the machine. Then something I feel needs a couple more props than it gets is this Klevv memory that Uncle Evetech has been bringing in. It's got a limited lifetime warranty, same as most of the brands, and this is an XK Hynix setup, so it's very similar to, say for instance, G-Skill. It's almost 1-for-1 with what those chips and stuff are, and then it's finished in really nice packages, I must say. Especially these new XRs, they look incredibly nice inside of the build, and the performance is within 1% of my old Corsair 3466 kit, the original 3466 CL16, which I run at 3200 megahertz on that DOCP profile for AMD, and I've been using that for testing across the platforms until I actually got the Klevv Cras X kit, which I've used continuously on my test bench. This stuff, which I have been using on my test bench for now the better part of a year, and honestly, in my test with the exact same motherboard and the exact same processor, these ran 1% faster than the Corsairs. Then for storage, of course, we cannot mess around, so we got the E2000R out. I've actually got a crystal disk mark benchmark run on the screen behind me, and you'll see, for instance, this 4 kilobyte 32 queues in one thread, which is a whole bunch of small files being transferred per second, which is honestly the most important test of an SSD, because it's very easy for drives to transmit large files because they don't have to constantly do read and write cycle changes or chopping of it. So when it opens a file, it opens the file, does the write, and then checks the file on the after of it that it's been done correctly with something called a CRC, or cyclic redundancy check, and that takes up time and speed, and normally results in it then lowering the speed like considerably, which it does still here, but the 4 kilobyte file size is faster than most 2.5-inch SSDs. That's what I'm talking about. Then we come to power delivery. Obviously, for a system like this, where your GPU is charging a casual 350 watts and your CPU is a 125 watt on base as well, you probably want a little bit of headroom there, and then all your fans and other devices, you're gonna need something with a little bit of power. So we threw in a CX850M. I really like this because it's semi-modular, so you don't have any extras in that you don't need, and then it comes with a 5-year warranty. Then to keep it cool and running in the best performance that it can consistently, we've spec'd the H100R RGB Platinum. I really like these new coolers from Corsair. They're sort of continuing their stride as being one of the best 240mm radiators that you can buy. I've used H100s from about 5 years ago continuously in different variants and builds and stuff, and they're always pretty much just a good time. And it comes down to how especially good their fans are with pressure. They're very good with air pressure to push it through, because you can have good airflow but without any pressure, as soon as you put something in front of it, it becomes a zero-sum game, and your fan becomes more like an asthmatic blowing through a straw. And finally, the last section of the build, the Evetech Trio case, which a lot of you guys have been asking about. I have changed up some of the default orientations and stuff in this case to get the best airflow through the system, to make sure our temperatures are remaining in the high 60s to low 70s, that being your nominal area to maintain your maximum performance. And even with all the fans maxed out as they are now, it's got quite a pleasant hum to it. It's not exactly a loud boy. And the overall effect with all the RGB and glass and everything that's going into this, it does look quite spectacular. So without further ado, let me show you some behind the scenes of me putting this thing together and then the final product. Okay, so here is the beauty of a machine. I have to say this Trio case does come together quite nicely, and actually I was a little bit worried about some airflow issues until we got to those extra fans on the side, and even the ones on the front. There's actually quite a nice big ventilation port on both sides of the front of the case, and then at the top and the bottom there's extras. So it's, while it is glass and it's closed off, it does hamper the airflow somewhat. The back end of it, it's just straightforward mesh, so there's absolutely nothing getting in the way of those fans pulling in from that side, just to make sure that intake is done quite correctly in this instance. And I prefer a lot of intake on a PC simply because it creates static pressure on the internal of the system and sort of pushes dust outwards from the system automatically. And then on the exhaust we have the H100 RGB Platinum, and then the exhaust fan at the back over here. So those are whisking all of that hot air away as it builds up, and then we're making sure that there's no hot air building up in the top here. So the glass on the top here is actually super cool. It's only right next to the GPU, which is pumping out hot air directly into the glass, that it is getting warm. And that's exactly how it should be. If you have a glass side panel case and you're getting hot spots in the top of your case, then you actually have insufficient airflow, unfortunately. Alrighty, so as you can see by our Firestrike benchmark, which we have open here, I actually really like this update that they've done, because they've included quite a number of interesting little drop-down menus and stuff, and changed this interface somewhat. And part of that is now you get an overall kind of representation of the general averages that you see from this kind of setup, and this is right on the money. It's in the great range, as I say. If we look at the spike in the graph, it's literally cutting up right through the center of it where it's supposed to be, and this is without doing any real overclocking optimizations or anything like that. This is just the raw build, and it is quite warm in here today. I'm actually starting to get a little hot under the collar right now. It's 21 degrees ambient, well, outside. And then the studio is encased pretty much for lighting and stuff in curtains and extras. So it gets quite warm in here, about 5 or 6 degrees higher than it is. So you could say your ambient in here is closer to 26, 27 degrees at the moment. And even with that, the machine is running quite happily. It just looks absolutely phenomenal, doesn't it? And with the performance that we're getting, you could put BF5 on ultra settings on 1440p and see 175 frames per second. And that's before NVIDIA DLSS is factored in. I can tell you that much, because with that factored in, you're probably going to get closer to like 190 FPS. So if you've got a 1440p 144 Hz monitor and you want to max it out, now you actually can. If you get, well, obviously the best processor and GPU you can get right now, then this will be absolutely fantastic for that. Anyway, do hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If you have, then hit us up with a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.